ओम सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां
वन्दे
गुरुपरम्पराम्।
गुरुपरम्पराम्।
ओम सहनाववतु
सहनावतु
सहनौ भुनक्तु
सहनौ भुनक्तु
सह
सह
वीर्यं
वीर्यं
कर्वावहै
करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा
विद्विषावहै।
विद्विषावहै।
ओम
ॐ
शांति
शान्ति
शांति
शान्ति
शांति।
शान्तिः।
ओम भद्रं
भद्रं
कर्णेभिः
कर्णेभिः
शृणुयाम
शृणुयाम
देवाः
देवाः।
भद्रं
भद्रं पश्येम
पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः
अक्षभिर्यजत्राः
स्थिरैरङ्गैः
स्थिरैरङ्गैः
सुष्ठुवागुंसस्तनूभिः
सुष्ठुवागुंसस्तनूभिः
व्यशेम
व्यशेम
देवहितं
देवहितं
यदायुः
यदायुः।
स्वस्ति न
स्वस्ति न
इन्द्रो
इन्द्रो
वृद्धश्रवाः
वृद्धश्रवाः
स्वस्ति नः पूषा
पूषा
विश्ववेदाः
विश्ववेदाः
स्वस्ति
स्वस्ति
नस्तार्क्ष्यो
नस्तार्क्ष्यो
अरिष्ठनेमिः
अरिष्टनेमिः
स्वस्ति न
स्वस्ति न
बृहस्पतिर्दधातु
बृहस्पतिर्दधातु।
ॐ
ॐ
शान्ति
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 शान्तिः।
शान्तिः।
Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya. Welcome to the class.
तत्सत्।
Tanmay, would you do the chanting, please?
Yes, Acharya. अथ तृतीयमुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
अथ
तृतीयमुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
वासुपर्णा सयुजा सखाया
वासुपर्णा सयुजा सखाय
समानं वृक्षं परिशस्वजाते
समानं वृक्षं परिषस्वजाते
तयोरन्यः पिप्पलं स्वाद्वत्ति
तयोरन्यपिप्पलं स्वागत्य
अनश्नन्नन्यो अपि चाकशीति
नश्नन्नन्यो
अभिशाकशीति।
समाने वृक्षे पुरुषो निमग्नः
वृक्षे पुरुषो
नः
निमग्नः
अनीशया शोचति मुह्यमानः
अनीशया शोचति
मुह्यमानः
जुष्टं यदा पश्यत्यन्यमीशमस्य
यदा पश्यत्यन्यमीशमस्य
महिमानमिति वीतशोकः
महिमानिति शोकः
यदा पश्यते रुक्मवर्णम्
यदा पश्यति रूपवर्णम्
कर्तारमीशं पुरुषं ब्रह्मयोनिम्
परमीशं पुरुषं ब्रह्मयोनिम्
तदा विद्वान् पुण्यपापे विधूय
पुण्यपापे विधूय
निरञ्जनः परमं साम्यम् उपैति
निरञ्जनः साम्यमुपैति
प्राणो ह्येष यः सर्वभूतैर्विभाति
प्राणो ह्येष यः सर्वभूतैर्विभाति
विजानन् विद्वान् भवते नातिवादी
विजानन् भवते नातिवादी
आत्मक्रीड आत्मरतिः क्रियावान्
आत्मक्रीड आत्मरतिक्रियावान्
एष ब्रह्मविदां वरिष्ठः
एष ब्रह्मविदां वरिष्ठः
सत्येन लभ्यस्तपसा ह्येष आत्मा
सत्येन लभ्यस्तपसा एष आत्मा
सम्यग् ज्ञानेन ब्रह्मचर्येण नित्यम्
सम्यक् ज्ञानेन ब्रह्मचर्येण
ब्रह्मचर्येण नित्यम्
अन्तःशरीरे ज्योतिर्मयो हि शुभ्रः
अन्तःशरीरे
शुभ्रः
यं पश्यन्ति यतयः क्षीणदोषाः
यं
यं
पश्यन्ति यतयः
पश्यन्ति यतयः
क्षीणदोषाः
सत्यमेव जयते नानृतम्
सत्यमेव जयते नानृतम्
सत्येन पन्था विततो देवयानः
सत्येन पन्था विततो देवयानः
येनाक्रमन्त्य ऋषयो ह्याप्तकामाः
येन क्रमन्त्यो
कामाः
यत्र तत्सत्यस्य परमन्निधानम्
यत्र सत्यस्य परमं निधानम्
बृहच्च तद्दिव्यम् अचिन्त्यरूपम्
बृहच्च
तद्दिव्यमचिन्त्यरूपम्
सूक्ष्माच्च तत्सूक्ष्मतरं विभाति
सूक्ष्माच्च तत्सूक्ष्मतरं विभाति
दूरात् सुदूरे तदिहान्तिके च
दूरात् सुदूरे तदिहान्तिके च
पश्यत्स्विहैव निहितं गुहायाम्
पश्यत्स्विहैव निहितं गुहायाम्
न चक्षुषा गृह्यते नापि वाचा
न चक्षुषा गृह्यते नापि वाचा
नान्यैर्देवैस्तपसा कर्मणा वा
नान्यैर्देवस्तपसा कर्मणा वा
ज्ञानप्रसादेन विशुद्धसत्त्वः
ज्ञानप्रसादेन शुद्धसत्त्वः
ततस्तु तं पश्यते निष्कलं ध्यायमानः
ततस्तु तं पश्यते निष्कलं ध्यायमानः
एषोऽणुरात्मा चेतसा वेदितव्यः
एषोऽनुरात्मा चेतसा वेदितव्यः
यस्मिन् प्राणः पञ्चधा संविवेश
यस्मिन् प्राणः पञ्चधा संविवेश
प्राणैश्चित्तं सर्वमोतं प्रजानात्
प्राणैश्चित्तं सर्वमोतं प्रजानात्
यस्मिन् विशुद्धे विभवत्येष आत्मा
यस्मिन् विशुद्धे विभवत्येष आत्मा
यं यं लोकं मनसा संविभाति
यं लोकं मनसा संविभाति
विशुद्धसत्त्वः कामयते यांश कामान्
विशुद्धसत्त्वः कामयते यांश कामान्
तं लोकं जयते तांश कामान्
तं लोकं जयते तांश कामान्
तस्माद् आत्मज्ञं ह्यर्चयेद् भूतिकामः इति तृतीयमुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
इति
द्वितीयमुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
Thank you, Tanmay.
Acharya.
Okay, so we are now at the third mantra. So we should get out of the habit of calling them verses or slokas. When the Upanishads are concerned, it is mantra. Other text, we can use the word sloka. So the third mantra is Yada Pashyaha Pashyate Rukma Varnaha Kartaram Isham Purusham Brahma Yonim Tada Vidwan Punya Pape Vidhuya Niranjanaha Paramam Samyam Upaiti. So Yada Pashyaha, The Pashyaha here is the subject, the one who sees, the Drishta. So Yada Pashyaha, when the seer, Pasyate Rukma Varnam. Pasyate, he sees Rukma Varnam. This gold colored creator, he sees Varnam. Rukma Varnam is gold color, golden colored, which is to be taken as self-revealing, self-effulgent. He sees that Kartaram, who is the creator. So Kartaram, Isham are two words, Kartaram plus Isham. Why there's two words, we will see. Kartaram, Isham, creator, who is the Lord, and Purusham, the supreme one, Brahma Yonim, the source of the womb of creation. Yada Vidwan Punya Pape Vidoyaha Niranjanam Paramam Samupeti. So Yada Vidwan, when that person, that Vidwan, Punya Pape Vidoyaha, Punya Papam means Papam and Punyam, Vidoyaha has given up, then Niranjanam, he is free from impurities. Upaiti, he attains Paramam Samyam, total identity with Brahman. Paramam Samyam. Samyam is the sameness, oneness. Paramam is Brahman, so he gets total identity with Brahman. In plain English, when the seer, he perceives Brahman, which is self-effulgent, which is the creator, which is the Lord, and which is the cause of creation, then at that point of time, he gives up all punyam and papam, free from impurities. He becomes one with Brahman. Very nice verse, very nice mantra. So this discerning seer, the one who is wise, that's why he's called Pashyaha, the one who sees properly in the appropriate manner. What does that mean? When I understand that if I claim myself as Jivatma, the Ahankara, I can never be liberated from the problems of samsara. Because wherever Ahankara goes, karma will chase. So wherever Sugrivan goes, Vali will chase. So that is the analogy here. Wherever Ahankara, who is Sugriva, goes, Vali, who is karma, will chase. And Pashyati Vidwan. Pashyaha is, Shankara says, this Pashyaha has to be understood as a Vidwan Sadhakaha. Vidwan Sadhaka is who? The wise seeker. Which means what? Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikari. The one who has got Sadhana Chatushtayam. He is the Vidwan Sadhaka. He is the Vidwan seeker. He is the wise seeker. He is called Pashyaha over here. He is an Adhikari. And his understanding is what? Viveka, discrimination. Such a seeker, Pashyaha, Pashyate. He sees. So what does he see is the question. So we have to supply. He discovers the Sakshi in his own heart. How? By undergoing Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam. And the Sakshi which he discovers, Rukma Varnam Purusham. He is a shining Purusha, shining like gold. That self-revealing Atma he sees. And here, when we say gold is shining, we have to understand that its original nature is shining. When we are polishing the gold to make it shine, the shine is not something which you are adding, right? The polishing is not adding a shine, though we are conditioned to think of it that way. Make it shine, we say. No. The polishing is removing the impurity which is concealing the shine. And when the impurity is removed, the natural shine of the gold shows. So Shankara also adds here, this shine, it is natural and it is also eternal. And Kartaram Isham Pashyat. One sees the sadhaka, that wise man, when you say that he sees Kartaram Isham, how does he see? Because he is saying he is a wise person. He sees that Kartaram and the Isham as himself only. So one sees one's own self as Kartaram, having freed oneself from Karma Phalam. So as I said, there are two words here, Kartaram and Isham. So Kartaram here is not the Jivatma who performs Punya Papam. So he is not Karta. Kartaram here is Sarvasya Jagata Kartaram. He is the creator of the entire Jagat, the Jagat Karanam. And therefore, since it is Lord himself, Brahman with Maya Upadhi, that Maya Upadhi is Sattva Pradhanam, predominantly Sattvam, and therefore there is no Ajnanam involved. Therefore, because we saw earlier, this person is, this Kartaram, this Ishvara, he is what? Both Sarvavit and Sarvagnya. He has specific knowledge and he also has knowledge that he is Brahman. Both he has. And since he is free from Ajnanam, from even when he creates, he does not actually create. He has no kartritvam at all. He has no doership. And that is why Krishna says, Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam in Bhagavad Gita. Even though I am the creator, know me to be not the creator. Even when he creates, he has no doership, no kartritvam. And Isham Pashyati. The Jivatma sees Ishvara. Okay. So one should note that this word Kartaram and Isham, they are used in a particular sense. Because we have two orders of reality, right? We have Paramarthika Satyam and we have Vyavaharika Satyam. Therefore, this word Kartaram Isham has its one leg in Vyavaharika, the relative reality, the transactional reality, and one leg in Paramarthika, the absolute reality. Kartaram is Vyavaharika. Isham is Paramarthika. They are seemingly different only. Why are they seemingly different? Whenever we recognize that there are two orders of reality, whenever we take it upon ourselves to understand it, that there is a Vyavaharika and there is a Paramarthika, that there is a relative order and there is a absolute order, only in that recognition, these two are different. Kartaram and Isha are different. But when they are used together, which is why Shruti uses Kartaram Isham. When they are used together, the Paramarthika, the absolute reality, it swallows up the Vyavaharika reality. Like the bangle is swallowed in the wake of the understanding of gold. The Mithya Namarupa bangle disappears in the knowledge that gold is the only substance. Similarly, when you understand the difference between Paramarthika and Vyavaharika, when you understand that Vyavaharika is Mithya only, then the Kartaram, the doer, is a Mithya Karta. He is swallowed up by the Paramarthika Brahman. Okay, so that is the meaning when I said that Kartaram Isham has two orders of reality. That single word is appearing in both the orders as long as you recognize that there is a Mithya and there is a Satyam. When you recognize that Satyam is not ultimately a real entity because it is dependent upon, when you recognize Mithya, Mithya is not a real entity because it is dependent upon Satyam. In that understanding, this Kartaram, who is Mithya, disappears into Isham, who is Paramarthika. The next word is Purusham. The Purusham we have seen earlier, Purayati Sarvam Iti Purushaha, that which pervades everything, that is called Purusha. This is also Isham. So this Purusham is Isham because he pervades everything. And what kind of Isham is there? He says Brahma Yonim. That Isham is Brahma Yoni. Now, Brahma Yonim we can have two meanings. As the Karanam, as the cause for the entire universe is Brahma Yoni. Literally meaning the womb which is Brahman. That Brahman here, when you use Brahma Yonim in the meaning of Jagat Karta, remember Brahman is what? Saguna Brahman. That is not Nirguna Brahman at all. So you can have the Karanam Saguna Brahman. You can also have Brahma Yonim, the Brahma being the very Karanam for Brahmaji himself. The Karanam for Hiranyagarbha itself can be called Brahma Yonim. Are you able to follow? You are splitting the words Brahma plus Yonim. In one case, you are saying Brahma is the Yonim, is the womb. The other case, you are saying that entity which is the womb for Brahman. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so there are two ways of looking. One is Brahma Yonim is that Brahma which is the Karanam for the entire world, which is Lord Brahmaji. One is the Yoni which is the Karanam for Lord Brahmaji. That is Nirguna Brahman. Either way, Brahman as the source of everything, the ultimate meaning is the same. And so he says Tada. When the knowledge arises, Vidvan, the wise person, Vidhuyaha. Vidhuyaha means to shake off. So Papa Punya Vidhuyaha. He shakes off his Punyam and Papa. And therefore it's like the dog shaking off the water on his fur, just for the cat. So that moksha is compared to this shaking off phenomenon. And why should you shake off Punyam, you might ask? From the Vedantic angle, Papam is definitely a bond which takes you towards samsara. Punyam is also a bond which takes you towards samsara. Both Papam and Punyam, they give sorrow. How? How do you explain the statement that both Papam and Punyam both give sorrow? Try it out. How much your understanding is there? Let us see. Come on, guys.
Can I try?
Omacharya?
Yes, yes. Go ahead. Rashmiji, go ahead.
Okay. So we say that Punyam gives sorrow because the Punyam also get exhausted. Ultimately, when they get exhausted, you have to come back to the lower world or come back to Sansara again. By doing Punyam, you go to higher loka, Swarga or other upper loka. But ultimately, they are also not sufficient. I mean, they do get exhausted. So the Sansara is all remains.
Okay. So, to put it in this world and not go to the next world, Punyam and Papam both give phalam, right? Both give some result.
Yeah.
So Papam gives you sorrow when the phalam arrives. When the disagreeable phalam arrives, Papam gives sorrow.
Okay.
Punyam gives agreeable phalam, but it gives sorrow when the phalam
It is done.
Phalam goes away. So both ways they give sorrow. So that's understanding. And Shankara, of course, adds one more word here. He says, he shakes off not only the Punyam and Papam, he says Samule. Along with the cause of the Punyam and Papam also shakes off. Very, very, significant addition by Shankara in his Bhashyam. He says not just Punyam and Papam is shaken off, but the very cause of Punyam and Papam is shaken off. What is the cause of Punyam and Papam? Karma. What is the cause of karma? Kartritva. Doership. What is the cause of doership?
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Ajnana. And so the ultimate cause of Punyam and Papam, if you go through these steps, karma is caused by doership, kartritvam. Kartritvam is the result of ajnanam, ignorance. And therefore, samule, along with the ajnanam, he shakes off the Punyam and Papam. This person who understands himself as Brahman. Then the fourth line is Niranjanaha Paramam Samyam Upaiti. So Niranjanam, having shaken off the Punyam and Papam, what is the status of the sadhaka? Niranjanaha, Nirmalaha, free from impurities. And the most powerful impurity, which is ignorance, which is Ajnanam, has been shaken off. And therefore, only Paramam Samyam. Samyam means oneness. The oneness with, the sameness. Paramam is Paramatma or Brahman. Or it can be taken as, Paramam can be taken as total, complete. Both ways are possible. So if you are saying Paramam Samyam, oneness with Brahma, it is okay. But if you take the other meaning, total oneness, so then the question will come up, why should there be the adjective complete oneness? Oneness is oneness. How can oneness be not oneness, complete or incomplete? So Shankara says in his Bhashyam, there are two types of this Samyam, of this Aikyam, oneness. One is a relative similarity or relative oneness, and one is an absolute similarity or absolute oneness. And relative, what do you mean by relative similarity? Where duality exists and where two things which have very many several common features would still have something which looks different or which is different. Okay, so to give an example of this, there is a discussion in the Brahma Sutra. It is about the Upasaka, the meditator. The meditator who goes to Brahma Loka. Okay. So normally we say meditator goes to Brahma Loka. What happens to him? What happens? Krama Mukti, right? So supposing this meditator who went to Brahma Loka is not, interested in Krama Mukti, but he is in Brahma Loka anyway. So there, Brahma Sutra says that because of his superior punyam, that superior punyam is acquired by what? By karma was definitely there, but upasana was also there. Because upasana was there, there is superior punyam. Because of that only, he has come to Brahma Loka. And in Brahma Loka, that it is said that he acquires all sorts of divine powers, special powers. And it is said that he can create whatever he wants by mere sankalpa, by mere mental will, that I want to create this, and that gets created. Right? And hence, this is why you see in the Puranas examples of supernatural powers, where somebody creates something purely by will. What is an example of that? You remember the story of Trishanku? What is the story of Trishanku?
He wanted to go to the Swarga with the body.
Yes. So he got chucked out. Then what did he do?
He just kept hanging in the middle.
No, but what? How did he manage to get to hang in the middle?
He went to, first he went to Vasishta ji, who said, I am not going to create another Swarga for you. Then he goes to Vishwamitra.
Yes.
And then Vishwamitra, out of the ahankar that he has of all of the powers that he's accumulated, he makes him another Swarga.
Yeah. So Vishwamitra makes him another, Swarga, another heaven he makes him. That heaven is in intermediate heaven, in between the real heaven and the earth. He creates another heaven for him. And Trishanku is the Lord over there. He is the Indra of that heaven. Okay. So that is why these kind of supernatural powers are talked about. And this is discussed in Brahma Sutra, where he says that, Vyasacharya says that this Upasaka, who has, because of all his special punyam, he has got unique divine and special powers, and he can create objects by mere sankalpa, by merely thinking about them. Then he asks the question, does this mean that he is exactly the same as Ishvara? What do you say? Somebody who can create anything he wants, is he exactly the same as Ishvara? Because Ishvara also by mental sankalpa only creates the whole world, whole universe. Is there a difference between this Ishvara and this special Upasaka?
Ishvara is Brahman himself, kind of.
We are also Brahman. You can't forget that.
The
Yeah.
upasak, the upasak or the sadhak who has these powers, is still a result of, you know, the avidya that he had, and then having done these upasanas and all of that, has gathered these siddhis, so to speak, while Ishvara is Ishvara.
Okay, so in Vyasacharya, incidentally, Vyasacharya is the author of Brahma Sutra also, okay? Not Shankaracharya as many people think. Vyasacharya is the author of Brahma Sutras. Vyasacharya writes over there in this particular Brahma Sutra, sutra, that he is not exactly the same. Though he has the power to create everything, there is one thing he cannot create. What is that? Shrishti. Creation, the universe he cannot create. Anything in the universe he can create. So that the special Upasaka has got these great powers. He can mentally create anything which is there in the universe, or which he wants, or which is not in the universe. But he does not have the power of Shrishti. The Shrishti, Sthiti, Laya, Karanatvam, as they call it. The power to create the Shrishti, the universe, to maintain it and to destroy it, that is not given to this Upasaka. Because there can be only one Ishvara, okay? One Ishvara, Brahman, Maya Sahita Brahman is Ishvara. And therefore, he is not absolutely equal. And therefore, Shankara uses his aparam samyam. He is almost equal, but not absolutely equal. And hence, Shankara says that all powers are with him, but they're inferior because all the Upasakas have the same powers. He is not the only Upasaka who has reached Brahmaloka. There may be hundreds of them. All of them have the same powers, but they cannot create Srishti. And therefore, he says Paramam Samya. To distinguish this from that relative sameness, he says this is absolute sameness. And there he says this mantra, it is referring to the absolute sameness. There is no difference between Brahman and the Upasaka. So it is not similarity which is inferior. And this same similarity, the Jnani, the Paramam Samyam, the non-inferior sameness, similarity, the Jnani attains. So in reality, if you look at the first mantra of this particular section, Dva Suparna, there really is no other bird at all. Right? That is all that bird has to understand. That the second bird is not there at all. So I am the reflection of the first bird. So one recognizes the other as his own reflection. That is all that is required to be understood from that particular mantra. Then a question can come up. Okay, so this Upasaka, he didn't get Jnana. And then he went to Brahmaloka and got all sort of powers short of creating the world. What about us? We are Advaitins, right? Advaitin means we have got Jnanam. So what happens when we get Jivan Mukti? Will I have the power of creating the world also? When I get Videha Mukti, will I have the power of creating the world also? That is a question which I want you guys to answer.
The question to ask is, who is the you who has the power to create anything in the first
Very good. So what? So what's the answer? Yes or no? Do you have the power to create? Do you not have the power to create? Assuming the you for the purpose of argument. You, to get an answer, go back to Tattva Bodha. not the creation aspect, the laya aspect. Tattvaboda doesn't very specifically talk about the laya, the destruction. But what is the corollary from the creation that we have to take? Tattvaboda talks in great detail about the creation. What is
I'm the
corollary?
creation myself.
That is okay, right? But there is a cycle of creation. There is a sequence of creation. And if we are to talk about destruction, then what can you draw? What corollary can you draw from the creation sequence?
The reverse of the creation sequence?
Very good. The reverse of the creation sequence. And therefore, when this Advaitin, when we Advaitins, okay, we Advaitins, when we get with, I'm not talking about Jivan Mukti. Jivan Mukti, nothing happens. You are just a normal, Jiva. Nothing happens to you. You don't get a halo around your head. You don't get any special powers. All you understand is that everything is Brahman. Therefore, the world stops disturbing you. That is Jivan Mukti. But when you get Videha Mukti, what happens to your three bodies? Because the reverse process has to be taken. This Sharira Trayam of mine, where will it merge?
Samashti Karana Shri.
Into the respective, Virat, Hiranyagarbha.
Exactly. Into the respective Sharira Trayam. Physical body will merge with Virat. Subtle body will merge with Hiranyagarbha. My Karana Shariram will merge with Antaryami. What is left? What is left?
What
Nothing.
is left was there, that which was there before.
So only Ishvara is left. And therefore, yes, you have the power of creating the world on Videha Mukti as a Jnani, but only because you are then no different from Ishvara. There is no you other than Ishvara. So a Videha Mukta, he exists at two planes, in Vyavaharika as well as in Paramarthika. He exists in the relative order of reality, in the transactional order of reality as what? As Ishvara. A Videha Mukta always exists only as Ishvara in the Vyavaharika. And in Paramarthika, he exists as what?
As Brahman.
As Brahma. Because there is nothing else in Paramarthika.
But it's a moot point anyway for the Videha Mukta. He doesn't have, there isn't any individual sense any longer.
He is Ishvara himself.
Yeah.
So again, this point needs to be very clearly understood, because whenever we are discussing what happens to a Jivan Mukta when the body goes away, you get all sort of confusing answers. But the answer is always in two phases. That Jivan Mukta, he continues to exist in Vyavaharika as Mithya Jiva, as Mithya Ishvara. And he continues to exist in Paramarthika as Brahman only. Nothing happens. But if I, as a Videha Mukta, have become one with Ishvara, and I've been able to, now I'm able to create the universe, I have the same power. Why can't I create the universe with my Jiva Upadhi, with my human body? Why cannot I create?
The Upadhi is itself limited.
The Upadhi itself is a limiting factor. That is why it is called Upadhi. Therefore, because you have got Jiva Upadhi, you cannot create. And therefore, this question of a Jnani after death, does he merge into Ishvara or Brahman? Both answers are correct. From the view of Vyavaharika, he merges into Ishvara. From the view of Paramarthika, he merges into Brahma. This is the understanding of this verse, of this mantra. Okay, now we will look at the fourth mantra. So, prano hesha yaha sarva bhutayat vibhati vijanin vidwan bhavate nativadi atma kridaha atmaratihi kriyavan esha brahmavidam varishtaha. Okay. So here, Jnana Phalam is being talked about. What is the Jnana Phalam? And Eshaha, this Atma, Pranaha. So Pranaha here is a technical word meaning Brahman. So Esha Atmaha, this Atma is Brahman. This is a Mahavakyam. Esha Pranaha, this Atma is Brahman. And Yaha, that Brahman, Vibhati, it manifests where Sarva Bhutaihi, in all the living beings, and therefore Vijanan, knowing this, knowing that this Atma is Brahman, and that same Atma which is Brahman, it is the manifestation, it is manifests in every living being, knowing that Vidwan, the wise man, this is a very important thing, okay? Vidwan bhavate na ativadi. The wise man falls silent. Na ativadi means one who talks too much. Na ativadi means one who does not talk too much or one who does not talk at all. He falls silent. Atma kridaha. Kridaha is a word which means enjoyment. The next word rati also means enjoyment. We will understand what is the difference. Atma kridaha, atma ratihi. He enjoys, he is content by himself. Both the words mean that there is a technical difference. We will look at that. Kriyavan. And while Kriyavan. Kriyavan means one who is doing Kriya, one who is doing actions. Okay, so this Jnani, he has fallen silent, but he is enjoying himself. He is happy by himself. He is content by himself. Even while Kriyavan, even though he is consistently doing activity. Eshaha Varishtaha Brahmavidaha. So Brahmavidam, among the Brahmavits, the ones who know Brahman, Eshaha Varishtaha. So this Eshaha here is different from the Eshaha of the first line in the mantra. What is the difference? First line also has Eshaha Pranaha. Here also Eshaha Varishtaha Brahmavida. So Eshaha Brahmavidam Varishtaha. What is the difference between the two Eshahas? Eshaha simply means he.
The first one talks about Atma, Brahman. The second one talks about the Jnani, the one who knows.
Excellent. So the first one, Eshaha, is Brahman, Atma. Second one is this one who knows, Eshaha, this Jnani, he is Brahmavidam Varishtaha. He is the most superior among all the Brahmavidas, among all the Brahmavits, the people who understand Brahman. He is the superior one. Okay. So that's why, because of all these usages.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
What are the other Brahman knowers then?
We are coming to that.
Okay.
A whole list of them. Okay. And if you remember your TTC, can you remember something which talks about this?
Is it the 7 Bhumikas?
Seven Bhumika. Excellent. So we come to that. Okay. So here in this particular mantra is talking about what? Jnana Phalam, the benefit of Jnana. So prana hi eshaha yah sarva bhutaihi vibhati. This is the prana that sustains all bhutas, all the living beings. What is a prana? Prana here is that one who is the sustainer of all upadhis, which is, if you use the technical terms of Tattva Bodha, who is the sustainer of all upadhis? Prana is a clue.
Brahman, Sagun Brahman.
Saguna Brahman. So Hiranyagarbha. Okay. He is sustainer because prana is Sukshma Shariram, subtle body. And therefore Hiranyagarbha sustains all subtle bodies, which is why the gross bodies are sustained. So prana here is Hiranyagarbha. Okay. And Eshaha here means, of course, Ishvara, subject of discussion. Sarva Bhutaihi Vibhati, shines in all beings. Now you can take this either at sentient beings or in sentient beings also. It doesn't make a difference. Ultimately, Everything is Satchitananda. And Shankara adds here, of course, he wants to clarify because Sarvabhuta can be taken as sentient and insentient, but Shankara is not happy with that meaning. So he says, and this is a very famous phrase which some of you may have heard, Brahmadi Stamba Paryantai. I think Tanmay asked me once about this. Brahmadi Stamba Paryantai. Brahma Adi. From beginning from Lord Brahma to Stamba Paryantam. Paryantam means up to the Stamba. What is Stamba? Stamba, remember, has two spellings. So who are the Sanskrit scholars over here? Stamba can be the small b and a bha. Stamba, Stamba. What is the difference?
It can be the smallest of grass and a stone and a pillar made of stone.
Yeah, Stamba, the small b is blade of grass, smallest piece of grass. Stamba is a pillar. Okay, so Shankara says Stamba, not Stambha. In the eyes of Shankara, he is referring to living beings only. That is why Lord Brahmaji to blade of grass. So appears in the form of all living things, which is what Brahman and Namarupa alone is the creation. Vibhati means shines, appears. Everything is Brahman only. Everything that you can see is Brahman only. That is what is meant by this particular line of the mantra. And that is why Brahmarpanam we say in Bhagavad Gita. Everything is Brahman only. All names and forms together is what? Maya. The clothes are Maya, but the content is Brahman. The bottle is Maya, but the inside of the bottle, what is contained, that is Brahman. So, Vijanan Vidwan, the wise person is the person who has gained this knowledge. How? By following the necessary sadhanas, by putting the necessary efforts. Okay. So, Vidwan is a very specific word where the effort needs to have been made. That is why the mantra says Vijanan. You have had to put in the necessary efforts. You cannot become a Vidwan by being the son of a Vidwan or daughter of a Vidwan. You have to become a Vidwan by studying, by understanding the Shastram, and therefore you must have had a teacher. That is necessary. What does the Vidwan know? When you say Vidwan, Vidwan is one who has knowledge. What does he know? He knows what, only one thing he knows very confidently. What is that?
Aham Brahmasmi.
Aham Brahmasmi, he knows. Okay, so Shankara says, Sakshat Atma Bhavena, Ayam Aham Asmi iti Vijana. This Brahman, I am, he knows. Because he knows that, Bhavate Nativadihi, Ativadihi na Bhavati. He stops talking. And here Shankara carries an interesting argument. He says, Sarvan Anyan Vaditum. He talks about everything else. He is talking about whom? About the Ativadi. The Ativadi, who is the opposite of Nativadi. The one who talks about everything is the Ativadi. And he says this Ativadi, he crosses the limits of all discussions. So this is the definition of Ativadi, the one who enters into irrelevant discussions and crosses all boundaries, of a dialogue, of a civilized dialogue, in an attempt to prove his point, whatever the point he's making. That person is Ativadi. He brings in all external subjects, irrelevant ones. And Shankara says here, but the Vidwan can never become an Ativadi, even if he talks about irrelevant things. Why?
Because Sarvam Brahman.
Because he knows whatever he's talking about, he's talking only about Brahman. So people say that this man is not talking about Brahman. But the one who knows, he says that this Vidwan, he does not talk about anything but Brahman. When you say that this fellow doesn't talk about Brahman at all, that statement is spiritually incorrect, because that implies there is something other than Brahman. And therefore, when Brahman is understood properly as Sarvam Brahman, everything is Brahman, then this distinction which we have between secular and sacred, it disappears. The distinction between dharmika and laukika, between spiritual activity and worldly activities, it disappears. The difference between vyavaharika and paramarthika disappears. That is why I said when it is understood, the paramarthika swallows the vyavaharika. And therefore, when are you a ativadi? If you do not know that Atma is the same as Anatma, if you do not understand that there is no differentiation between Atma and Anatma, and you are talking about Anatma, then you are a Ativadi. But the Jnani, even if he is talking about what appears to be Anatma, for him there is nothing other than Brahman. And so Shankara says, how will he talk about anything other than Atma? Another way of looking at this, because not many people want to talk about Atma, he does not talk too much. Therefore, ativadi bhavati, nativadi bhavati. He stops talking. So reduction of talking, except in class, okay. Reduction of talking is an indication of Vedanta being assimilated. So everything here is temporary. From Brahman's point of view, everything is there. Why obsess about anything at all? So all this unnecessary time which people use for talking about non-Atma things, from the Ajnani's point of view, that time can be converted into Nidhi Dhyasanam time for us. Okay, what remains is two words which we used, Atma Kridaha and Atma Ratihi. So Krida is a word which is used in association with the external world. Therefore, if you are deriving joy from things outside you, if you are being happy with things outside you, with the external world, then you are a krida. You are using the word krida. So bahya sadhana sambandhena. If you are thinking about other things and being happy, then you are a krida. But if you are happy by yourself, then you use the word atmaratihi. And Shankara here the Shruti here, by using both the words, it's saying that whether he is deriving happiness from the external world or from himself only. Why? Because he is Brahman. Therefore, he is happy by himself. If any Anatman is there to play with, he is happy there also. If it is not there, he is Atmaratihi. It's an expression of Purnatvam. So the word Krida and the word Ratihi are used differently. One is external means, one has no means, internal means only. Self-Ananda. And he says Kriyavan. Why does he use the word Kriyavan? Kriyavan means engaged in activity. So all worldly activities are being talked about, because any role that I play in this world, I may be a father, I may be a student, I may be a teacher. Every activity, every role has some duties from the Vyavaharika angle, from the worldly angle. And this Jnani does not ignore that. He gives importance to that also and follows that dharma so that there is no confusion in society. And Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita that the Jnani should not confuse society. He should continue to be a role model for activity. But earlier on, before I got Jivan Mukti, I was doing all these activities for getting moksha. But now I do it for a different reason. I continue living as if nothing has happened, right? A very special word over here. Because then why do I do any karma at all? How can a jnani do karma? Because everywhere we say that jnanam is opposed to karma. Right? Jnanam has to be diametrically opposed to karma. And Shankara spends hours in his Bhashyam in the Upanishads saying that jnanam and karma cannot coexist. Jnana karma samuchchaya has been refuted by him in great detail. That's what Shastric statement is there. Jnanam and karma cannot coexist. How will you understand this? How will you understand this statement of Shruti saying that Kriyavan? But that Jnani, he continues to work.
If we take it at the two levels of Satya again, taking it at those two levels, then it makes
Yes.
complete sense.
Correct. So if you replace the word Kartritvam, then karma can be replaced by Kartritvam, doership. Then it makes sense. Jnanam and karma can coexist, but Jnanam and Kartritvam cannot coexist. This has to be understood. You can be a doer, but you need not have doership. You have to note very importantly that karma and Jnanam can exist. Jnanam and Kartritvam cannot exist. So at Paramarthika level, Vyavaharika is not there at all. It is Mithya only. Because you don't understand that Vyavaharika is Mithya, that is why all the problems. So there is no rule, says Shankara very specifically writes. There is no rule saying that a doer should have doership. What a beautiful statement. Kriyavan kartitva vishishtaha iti niyamana iti na niyamaha. Kriyavan kartritva vishishtaha iti na niyamaha. There is no rule that one who does karma should have doership. Right? Okay. Now we look at the last part of it. Eshaha Brahmavidam Varishtaha. So such a Jnani is the greatest among the knowers of the Veda. Brahmavidam means one who is a knower of Veda. He is the greatest among the knowers of the Veda because he is not just a Jnani, he is also a Jnana Nishthaha. Now Jnana Nishthaha has got two or three names in Bhagavad Gita. Can you recall any?
Sthita Prajna was one.
Sthita Prajna was one. Then chapter 14.
Sthita Dhihi, Sthita Muni.
Chapter 14. Chapter 14 is a very beautiful word. Guna Atitaha.
Gunatita.
Right. Okay. So when you say the Vedavit here, we mean a Brahmavidam. Because Jnani is a Jnani. Right. How can you do a gradation over there? So this is a confusion which I had for a very long time when I studied the 7 Bhumikas. There is no gradation ever in Jnanam. Either you are a Jnani or you are not a Jnani. You don't slowly become a Jnani. You don't say that, okay, today I am, half of Brahman I am, then 3/4 of Brahman I am, then full Brahman I am. It doesn't go in stages, right? Either you know you are Brahman or you don't know you are Brahman. So gradation in Jnanam is not acceptable. But gradation in the obstacles are acceptable. So pratibandha nivrittihi, the removal of the obstacles. What are the obstacles? Now we are talking about post-jnanam, post-mananam. Why is it that you don't experience the benefits of jnanam after mananam stage is over? Why is it that many people don't experience the benefits of jnana?
Because of viparyas?
Because of viparya. All sort of habitual thinking patterns. Okay, viparita bhavana we call it. All pratibandhas, obstacles. So in the removal of the obstacles, there can be stages. Because obstacles will have to be removed one by one. What is the process for removing them called?
Nididhyasanam.
Nididhyasanam. And therefore you have Brahmavid, Brahmavidvaraha, Brahmavidvaryan, Brahmavarishta. Remember all these names from DTC? Brahmavid, Brahmavidvaraha, Brahmavidvarya, Brahmavarishta. This word Brahmavarishta here is with reference to that. The obstacles are being removed sequentially only because Nididhyasanam has to work on that. During Nididhyasanam, you are working on your obstacles only. See, in other words, in our language, the extent of FIR reduction that I have is indicated by these terms: Brahmavid, Brahmavidvaraha, Brahmavidvarya, and Brahma Varishta. All Vedavids, all knowledge, all people who know Brahman have to become Brahmavid at some point. Okay. The point is, it takes time. And therefore, it brings a very, very interesting, point of view over here. How is Nididhyasanam different from Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga? In this sense, okay, very clearly, during Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga, Jnanam is not there. Absolute Jnanam is not there. Right? Otherwise, the two processes are aiming at the same thing, is it not? What does Karma Yoga and Upasana give you? What is the benefit?
Karma Yoga gives freedom from Mala
Yes.
and Upasana from Vikshepa.
Together we call them Chitta Shuddhi. Now the point is, if you had Chitta Shuddhi fully, 100%, you wouldn't even need Mananam. Shravanam would take care of your Jnana Nishtha itself. And therefore, one is post Jnanam, one is pre Jnanam. Both are Chitta Shuddhi itself. Okay. The only thing is, Shastra does not want to insult us for all the hard work we have done by saying that no, you do Chitta Shuddhi even after Jnanam. So they give it a new name, Nididhyasanam. Nididhyasanam is nothing but working on Chitta Shuddhi only. Little bit refinement in the understanding of Nididhyasana. Any question?
No, it makes sense, because if that Chitta Shuddhi was purely there, then like you said, just hearing it in the first place, as it does happen in the case of, the rare
Does happen. Yes.
So it is a case of just those same obstacles kind of raising their heads over and over again.
Yeah. So we who are priding ourselves on having reached Nididhyasanam stage, we must remember that we are still working on Chitta Shuddhi only.
Well, if we are priding ourselves in that, then there is the problem.
A lot of people say, I have done Jnanam, Mananam, everything. I am now Nididhyasanam only. But the point is, Nididhyasanam is also Chitta Shuddhi sadhana only.
Being able to sort of fix the mind on that constantly, irrespective of whatever is going on around.
Which is exactly what Upasana does.
Right.
Right. So one more of your fond ideas has been dismantled today. That you are in something special called Nididhyasanam. You are not. You wouldn't need Nididhyasanam if Chitta Shuddhi was there in the first place. And that is why, you have cases where, sages who are taken as jnanis, they go and do Nididhyasanam for the rest of their lives. Because Nididhyasanam is a process which has to be kept on as long as you've got a body. A physical body has the capacity to take your mind away from the teaching. And therefore, Nididhyasanam is there all the time. That was the main purpose of sannyasa, to keep you in that Nididhyasanam stage. Because you would have completed all the studying stage and understanding stage and all that, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, all this would have been done by the time you finished a Grahastha stage or Vanaprastha stage at least. And therefore, you needed exclusive Nididhyasanam time with no other bindings. That is why sannyasa was there. Okay, any questions?
So Acharya, there probably aren't really, binding rules for this. It is a process that is to be done at all points in time and any point in time. And
see, when you finish a Mananam stage, then if you have kept a commitment up to that stage, then you are firmly committed. Right? You are not going to move away. And therefore, the quality of the sadhana that you put in will be very high. And here at this point of time, you are objective enough to realize that do a self-analysis and see, okay, what is it that I have, which is a problem? Do I get angry? Do I get jealous? Do I get fearful about things? Am I insecure about my future? In spite of the jnanam, if your answer is yes to all these things, it means work is needed, no, on all these things. See, we have been at this, at least the original batch, almost all of you are the original batch. We have been it for more than 6 years. It's enough time to have the knowledge. But can we truly say that insecurity is not there? That you don't get irritated? You can't. Or at least I can't. So then, for that, you need to work on those deficiencies, if you want to call it, or pratibandha is a better word, obstacles. And that process for that is nididhyasana. And one by one, as you work towards it, you will feel yourself becoming more and more free. That is what is indicated by those 7 Vibhutat bhumikas. One movement, at least the last 3 bhumikas, are the indication of progress towards jnana nishtha. Complete removal of all your obstacles.
Raviji, I
Yeah.
was going through Viveka Chudamani the other day, and there the qualified student goes to a teacher, and the teacher addresses him as "O liberated one" in the past tense, like saying you are already liberated,
Yeah.
meaning you are such a qualified student, you've gotten this far. It's as good as you being a jnani.
Yes. So what was the question?
No question.
Yeah. See, at our stage, I mean, truly, okay, you've got to say it as a statement of fact. If you're going to pat yourself on the back and say it, then as Tanmay said, there's a lot of work to be done. If it's a statement of fact that yes, I don't have any doubts that I'm Brahman. And yet, all of us have problems in life. No, I can't say for with 100% that I'm never upset or I never get annoyed. If you can say that, then you are Jivan Mukta. But if you can't say that, then you have certain things which you need to work on. And for that, as SPG once told me, he said that post jnanam, your best nididhyasana is, you know what? Is Shravanam again. So you Shravanam, Mananam, and then Shravanam again. This thing never ends. You go back to Shravanam. That Shravanam is now nididhyasana. It's called nididhyasana. A new name is given, and the effect is much better this time because your mind is tuned to receive. And therefore, the same Shravanam which you did earlier and gave you certain benefits will give you much more benefits now. That is how we need to work on it. Of course, you can have specific, nididhyasanam by taking up your defect and saying, okay, I get angry easily. And then you analyze that and say, who is getting angry? What is the basis on which I'm getting angry? Is it that an expectation from some person? In that manner, if you analyze, then it's easy to see where you are going wrong and then work towards removing that. One by one, things have to be removed. That is the nididhyasanam process, which is the longest part of jnanam actually. The post jnanam, shravanam or analysis is what is called nididhyasana. There we need to work on it.
And it's being able to stay in it, being able to sustain that
Being
no
able
matter
to
what.
sustain that. Yes, being able to sustain that no matter what. Because you'll have people who will tell you that, Vedanta has made you useless for us. That is something which you need to be able to withstand.
Actually, I don't know if it is related out here or not, but kind of understanding Maya for what it is and Atma for what it is and all of that. Whenever there is something wrong that is sort of going on or any sort of adharma kind of going on around you and you're a witness to it, as a Vedantic sadhak, as a student. So, obviously the mind would get a little disturbed and has its own way of coming back. But when that adharma continues, what, when you see it continuing, what is that person to really do?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. Okay, anybody wants to answer that? What does a Vedantic do without compromising his Vedantin status when he faces adharma in the world, either on himself or on others? Who would like to answer? Maybe Natarajji can answer. Natarajji? No, he's not. Okay, anybody
Yeah,
else?
I'm here. I'm
Okay.
here. Sorry.
Okay, Natarajji. Yeah.
I think I need to think about this.
All right, so let's get hold of somebody else. Priyanka, do you want to try?
I'm not sure. It's like one of the Dharma Sankat wala.
But then, all right, Meda.
It's very difficult to give black and white answers. It's
Yeah.
not a specific question.
Yes, so give a example and then say what could have been done.
I think various factors are there, like the personality of the Vedantic student, the situation, and what exactly is the situation.
Yes, the environment is important. Supposing, for example, there is a clash between Vedanta and your duty, right? You, as a grahastha, as a householder, you are supposed to take care of certain things, safety of your family, safety of your children. If that is compromised, what would you do is one question. So I would say very clearly that your duty can never be compromised. Otherwise, you are, as a Vedantin, you're useless. That is why we talk about sannyasa, breaking the bonds. But if the bonds are there, I cannot say I'm a sannyasi and not do anything. So their action is definitely required. Now, if you are in a situation where there is...
I'm so sorry, I'm interrupting, but
Yeah.
I mean, sannyasa has also kind of, evolved over the years or whatever. And funnily enough, there are even more bonds that are created now when you go into an even bigger samsara. And,
I agree with
you're in
you.
an ashram and all of that
I
stuff.
agree with you.
And then, there are so many people who suddenly have expectations and a bond with you and, kind of make you responsible for them.
The moment you give in to that, you
Yeah.
are back very, very strongly back into samsara.
Yeah, I mean, more so than
Yeah.
ever,
Whatever.
yeah.
So I would say, nature has a beautiful way. Okay, by the time you are 70 years old, nobody expects anything from you. So that is the time when you strengthen this. Though it doesn't really, work in my case because
Is it okay to sort of, I'm sorry if this is a very personal question, is it okay to give in your priority at this point and at a point in time? Is it okay to withdraw from all of that also from this?
I don't think I've been able to do that because I decided sometime back that I would withdraw largely from my responsibilities. But I still get my daughter saying, "You're my father, you have to do this." What do you do? You are trying to balance disappointing a child and hurting her very badly, and then not getting involved in karma. So, very difficult situation.
Like Medha said, no black and white answer.
There is no black and white answer. So I keep to myself as far as possible. I tell them that I'm available for you, but I also tell them that, you guys are all adults and you need to work on your own.
There was that, other overlying umbrella question about
what do you do when you see absolute adharma? I think it largely depends upon what is your role. If you are in the role of protector, yes, you need to intervene. If you know that you can intervene and do some good, even if you are not in the role of protector. So you are walking past and somebody has an accident on the road, you can intervene. You can just make a phone call, get the hospital van to come. Those are definitely your necessary doings. But if somebody is having a absolute adharmic thing, like there is a fight going on, Do you want to get into that is a question.
Right.
So there are no black and white.
Yeah.
As a pure Vedantin, you could probably say all this is a play of karma. I'm not interested. I don't want to get involved.
Of course.
But it's not possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's not possible. So that question really, really has no answer.
Yeah.
You know, everything has to be worked. The only one guideline I can think of is that any action you take should be taken with the understanding that, or with the analysis, which of these action is going to cause the least disturbance in my FIR.
Yeah.
That is
In my FIR or least disturbance?
my FIR. Other people's FIR I can't control. Right?
But that's the thing, right? That's the whole struggle between protector of well, outside protector and inner protector. That's the struggle.
That is always a struggle. But if people have built up expectations, then I think the wise thing to do is over a period of time, that expectation should be let go of by them.
Yeah. Oh.
You have to work towards that. At the same time, if they are seriously in need of help, a person who cannot do that, I don't know how he can be a spiritual seeker.
Right.
So in fact, if you look at the other religions, like for example, Sikhism and all, they have a huge amount of focus on helping other people.
Yes.
Vedanta doesn't. But we say, Sarve Sukhina, everybody should be happy.
Raviji, I may be wrong, but in sannyas ashrama, is there a general what do you say, guideline of non-interference?
Yeah, as sannyasi, in fact, you are not supposed to even defend yourself.
Acharya, there are, there are so many various, again, this has evolved since so many thousands of years, and there are various lineages of sannyasa also, and each one has very different rules.
Each one has very different rules.
Very different rules.
But Raviji, this non-interference and the compassionate nature of a jnani sannyasi, aren't they at odds?
Yes, they are at odds. Non-interference in the sense that if it doesn't mean that if somebody is going through bad karma that you say, okay, that's his karma, I'm not bothered. You have to say, can I help? That is the nature of, and Krishna says it, right? Loka sangraha. You have to do that. Because the only thing is that is the only purpose for which you do karma. At a sannyasi stage, you do karma only for the purpose of helping others. Because there is no karma which is arising for your own fulfillment. That is why Krishna says in the Gita, right? Lokasangraham is a must for a jnani. Because at that point of time, he doesn't want any action for his own happiness. So his whole action, every action of his, is for the purpose of ensuring that other people are happy. Because he knows that other people are not different from him, and therefore in making them happy, he's doing what? He's making himself happier.
Agreed, Ravi, but even help comes in so many forms. Like there is money, and there is food help, and there is even jnanam, which is also help. And it's not possible for one person to help the whole suffering of the whole planet.
It's not.
So, it's very tough to say, okay, this is where I draw the line and this is where I offer my help.
You can give jnanam very happily, because jnanam doesn't deplete. If you give money, money depletes. So you can give money if you have enough money, but you shouldn't be put in the position of having to ask for money of yourself. That's all that I can say. But yes, it's not easy. So there is really no, and that's why you'll find a lot of sannyasis, they set up ashrams for orphans, for old people. They do that. Because in that way, they're contributing to the happiness of others. At the same time, they teach also. In fact, the Dayananda Ashram, if you see, they have a wing which looks after underprivileged. At the same time, they have a wing which teaches also. So that's a good combination, helping others and at the same time teaching. But to your question, where to draw the line? There's no answer. You have to always see how you are most comfortable.
It's, I guess, it's from person to person, from each
From person to
different
person. There really cannot be any straight line for this.
And also, is it different for a jnani and a sadhaka? Because a sadhaka has to be more focused and spend time studying and all those things, whereas jnani, that is not the case.
No, sadhaka, of course, is doing it as karma yoga. He is doing it for chitta shuddhi. Jnani is not doing it for chitta shuddhi. Jnani is doing it for loka sangraha. So that the origin or the cause itself is different. To that extent, it is different. It may not be different in terms of the effect.
No, I'm talking about a sadhaka who says, I want to spend more time in study, and then people call them selfish.
That's okay.
There's a
That's
perception that Vedanta studies or moksha, the goal of moksha is the selfish one.
yeah.
That
I hear it all the time. So that's not selfish. The goal of moksha is the best and most unselfish thing you can, because moksha means what? You're identifying with everybody else. And actually, we can no longer say things like I want liberation, right? I don't hope none of you think that you need liberation. Is there anybody who thinks that you need moksha?
no, but I think I need a little more time to study.
That is good. But studying is fine. But never make the mistake of saying that I need moksha.
But Ravi, I need liberation from my ego, that's for sure.
But the ego is not you, no, Natarajji.
Yeah, but I'm identifying with it. I'm reacting with it. I'm, going through life. I was thinking, a thought that came to my mind while we're having this discussion. This is going to be a question that will always be there as long as we are living in the ego. Where to draw the line, right?
The point is, without that ego, without the ahankara, you won't be able to eat. Only identifying with the body, you are able to eat, right?
Yes, I suppose, but
so that ego is a very important thing for the purpose of worldly transactions.
Of worldly transactions, but so you're saying that one cannot live without the ego.
One cannot live without the ego. That ego is what you need for transacting. But as long as you're aware that yes, this is needed for transacting, but I am not that thing. You need the body for transactions, therefore you need the ego. Ego is the self-identification, essentially.
Basically playing the part of an actor.
Yeah. But that is why Nididhyasana, that consistent thinking that yes, my body is doing this work. I'm identifying with the body consciously for the purpose of doing this work, but I am different from the body. Yeah. That's the Nididhyasana.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's very difficult to consistently keep it up. You can do it during 5 minutes of meditation, perhaps, but consistently keep it up, extremely difficult.
It's who is the I identifying with? Does I identify with hands, feet, senses?
Yes. Who is the I identifying
and
with?
so forth, or does the I identify with the non-dual?
See, this is why I said about Sakshi. The Sakshi you can identify with without too much difficulty. But to identify outside the box with Brahman, that takes a real leap. You can very easily say, I am that consciousness in my heart. That's easily say means you can do it. It's accessible because it seems to be limited to your heart. So the first thing is to identify oneself as Sakshi, and then we can move on to the rest of it.
Acharya, sort of a relevant question, with regards to this ego, and because you brought it up during the Trishanku story. So Vishwamitra, for example, he left everything, he left his kingdom and all of that to do this tapasya and all that. And he later on came to be known as Brahma Rishi.
Yeah.
Right? But how does it work like that when the story goes that, he reached that stage and it was all basically out of spite for Vasishtha, right?
That was up to the Raja Rishi stage.
Yeah, but even after that, even after the Rajarshi stage, when he goes to Brahma Rishi stage, and then apparently, according to the story, Vishnu has to come to him, Shiv has to come to him and say and tell him, please let go of this pran and let the whole world, let the whole Srishti breathe.
Yeah.
And he says, no, I'm not going to do that till Vasishta comes and says, I am a Brahma Rishi. You guys have said I'm a Brahma Rishi, but I want Vasishta to come here and say that. So then finally Vasishta has to come and say, you are a Brahma Rishi, now please, whatever. And then he is satisfied.
Yeah. So actually, he would not have been a Brahma Rishi until that stage, I suppose.
How does that work? That ego was very much, that same ahankara was still
Very much there. So these stories are all, very symbolic for us to understand what are the pitfalls.
Okay.
I don't think
As
you can
long as it's that.
Yeah, I don't think you can take it at face value that Brahma Rishi is a fellow who can create the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so basically, I guess the import is that the ego goes till that stage also. And
Ego is
beyond that,
everywhere. If
and
you
we have
think
to-
that you are a great tapaswini, then you have a massive ego.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, all the sadhus who we meet, they all have certain amount of ego. I've met a huge amount of them. Very rarely do you meet one with who has a relatively softer ego, not very strong one. Okay, there's a long half an hour discussion on aside topics today, but anyway. All right, thank you so much. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you.